This is the Sic Em Podcast. The Sic Em Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics. Now, here are your hosts, Brooke Bednarz and the voice of the Bears, John Morris.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Sic Em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. John Morris, Brooke Bednarz. Brooke, let's go out to the track. How about that? Weather is warming up. Outdoor track and field season is underway, and we've got the Baylor Invitational coming up this weekend.
Yes, we do. It's been beautiful outside, which is something we could not say as of maybe a week ago.
Right.
You know, and I certainly enjoyed it over the weekend, and I know our track and field team did as well because they had a lot of success down in Austin.
We'll talk about all of that as we welcome in Baylor's track and field coach, Michael Ford. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Thank you very much for this. This is a busy week, busy time for you.
It's always busy. From January to June, it'll be busy.
It really is. It really is. Your first year as head coach of the track and field program. How would you? What's been the best learning experience for you so far?
You better have a planner for sure. I think my first talk to the team in the summer, I said my door was always open. I think now I need to close it just because they're in there a lot more. But it's been awesome just to have them being able to come in and talk to me about pretty much everything. I think the biggest thing for me is just making sure that I'm just not focusing on the short sprinters and the hurdlers. I got to focus on this whole team now. So I think that's been my biggest adjustment. And the time piece for me has probably been the biggest change. I don't have a lot of time to do what I like to do.
Yeah.
I went back and I watched your introductory press conference when you became the head coach, and one thing that kind of stood out to me, and you just kind of mentioned it, but you even had to switch your Twitter name. You were like BU Sprint Coach, and now you're BU Head Coach. So how has that been, transitioning from just focusing on that one main part to, the whole broad sport that is track and field?
Yeah. It was definitely a big change. I think, but it was a good change. I think a lot of times as coaches and people, we get into a comfort zone, and I think God is always trying to get us to get to another level. And so a lot of times we got to break out of that comfort zone and I guess take that step of faith to do better things. And I think that's what happened. And so for me right now, I think that's the biggest thing. And then knowing the other events, the field events, and what's a good mark in like long jump, what's a good mark in the throws, and what's a good time in the distance of events. So for me, is just making sure that as a head coach now, that my staff is like making sure that I'm supporting them, and making sure that I keep challenging and keep pushing them, because as you know, coaches, the grind is, we grind a lot all season, all season during the season, and we do get tired. And so I think my big thing that we talked about last week was making sure that we keep challenging each other. And then if I look tired, then I need you guys to lift me up. And if you guys are tired, I need to lift you guys up.
It's really good. And in track and field, like as the sprint coach, which you've done up until this year, you got blinders on. You're just focused on that one area and those student athletes. But, man, you got to take those blinders off, and there's a whole big track and field world out there.
Yeah, like normally I would go to the meet. I would go, like, if we just had a regular meet, we're not talking about Texas relays, but a regular meet, my first event would be the 4x1. And now the field events are going earlier. So now I'm like actually getting up to watch the field events go, or staying late. Texas relays, we had Ellie running the 15, and then we had Taylor running the 5, and they were like 9 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And so I'm just like, man, I got to stay out here and watch this too. And so it's good that I was able to watch them. A lot of times now I'm actually watching stuff on my phone. Yeah. Kind of just keeping track of everything too. Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy because it's not like a basketball court where it's all happening right in front of you. They are spread out everywhere. I've been to a handful of track meets, and I was just like, okay, when is my person running, and where am I, and what do so I can only imagine what it's been like for you, especially at the relays with the number of schools that were there.
Yeah, Texas relays were definitely back to normal. Last year, during the COVID year, they didn't have the high school Last year they had a lot more individual events. So we were able to kind of track it a little better. And then they had the relays, of course. But then this year with the they added back to high school. And it was pretty much from Thursday to Saturday all day. I mean, I think Friday I was out there at least 13 hours between, and then also trying to recruit too at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. That's jumping into the outdoor season, right? I mean, I know you ran at TCU, I think, the week before, much smaller scale there.
Yeah.
But this is really both feet forward into outdoor season.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually had a meet right before the indoor national meet. We took a small group to Texas, to Austin for a small meet, and then we had indoor nationals, and then we went to literally that was spring break, and then we went to TCU, and it was I think like maybe 6 teams there. And then we went into the Texas relays.
Which, let's just the Bears faced off against 9 top 10 programs: Florida, Texas, Kentucky, Arkansas, LSU, Princeton, Texas A&M, Georgia, and TCU. Yeah. That is not a small meet. And yet we have a lot of highlights to be able to talk about. And that is a successful meet for you guys.
Yeah, I thought the team, I mean, one of the things we always have a theme for the week. That was just kind of like, this week is going to be the, I guess, a mini test week with all the teams that were there. And looking at the bigger picture, Texas Relays is probably one of the biggest meets of the year. But in the grand scheme of everything, it's only the second meet.
Right,
it was like the
early.
second meet for some schools. It was a second meet for us. Or it might be the first meet for some schools, second meet for us. And so the bigger scheme of it, the big thing is let's make sure we come out of here healthy. Let's try to run some fast times so we can. And then let's go back to the drawing board and get ready for conference, because that's the big meet for us is the conference championship, the Big 12 meet in Lubbock. And so for us, it was a big emphasis because a lot of our kids are from Texas, of course, so they want to do well in front of their family and their fans. But for us as coaches, we got to realize, hey, it's a bigger picture.
Right.
But when you see Florida and you see Arkansas, you see Kentucky, Georgia, Texas Tech, I mean, you have to step it up at that time.
Well, we want to talk about some of the performances in Austin, but I want to ask you about your first year as a head coach and the legacy, the Baylor legacy of track and field is just great. I mean, of course, Coach Hart for, half a century, there coaching, and then Todd Harbor, and now you, all Baylor guys, as head coaches of the program. That's got to be, you got to be proud of that. You following in that legacy.
Yeah, it's. I think the other day I was actually laying down, and it was weird. Coach Harbor sent me a text and was like, hey, good luck at Texas Relays. And I was like, yeah, Coach, everything is good. And then probably 10 minutes later, Coach Hart sent me another text and was like, hey, I'm going to come down and watch the team run at Texas Relays. And so we've always preached family. And so for them to continue to keep in contact with me it's been awesome. And then me just knowing the tradition that we've had, but just want to make sure I keep it going with them.
Let's talk about your journey to becoming a head coach. You had all the different roles, and kind of walk us through when you first came to be a coach at Baylor to now.
Well, me and Coach Hart, I was still living in Rochester, New York at the time, and me and Coach Hart kept in touch, because I was starting to do my coaching career up at the University of Rochester, and so we kept in touch, talked about training and just different training philosophies, and then I remember I was also working at a law firm too, and I'm looking out the window, and Coach Hart calls me, he said, hey, got a question for you, and I was like, hey, what's up? And he was just like, would you like to be a coach at Baylor? I was like, what, a track coach? And he's like, yeah, of course, track coach. And I said, do I need to fly down for an interview or anything? He said, no, this is it right here. He said, just tell me yes or no.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa.
Let me take a breath. Hold on.
And so I said, hey, let me talk it over with my family up there, and let me pray on it. And I prayed on it, and God was kind of leading me towards getting into coaching full time. And so I said, sure. And so I came back down, and Coach Hart met me. I remember we used to we used to have we had cars back then. And so I remember he dropping the keys off to like a Montero Sport and say, hey, this is your car. This is your company car now. And I'm like, oh, cool. This is awesome. But literally, I would say this, my first 4 years here, I didn't really coach a bunch. I just did a lot of recruiting. And at times it was frustrating because I couldn't implement anything. But when I look back at it later, it was probably the best 4 years I've ever had because I learned from one of the greatest coaches of all time. And then I think once we got comfortable with each other on the coaching side, then he said, hey, you can go ahead and take over the sprints. And so for me, it was more of me learning his style, learning how he interacted with athletes to get the best out of them. And so for me, it was the same thing. And so I think in maybe 05, after year 4, he was just like, hey, you can take over the 1 and the 2. You'll help me with the 4 and the 4x4s. And that's what we did for that block of time. And then eventually started more so focusing on the 1 and the 2 and the relays. And we had some interaction where some of the short sprinters ran on the 4x4. So we talked a bunch then. And then, of course, when Coach Hart retired, then I ended up taking control over all the sprints and the short hurdles. And it kept going from there.
That is great. Great story. So do you just get a call one day from Coach Hart?
Oh, yeah.
Fresh out of the blue. You want to move back to Texas?
I think we talked pretty much maybe once a month just on training. And he was asking me how things were going. And it was weird because the school I was at, University of Rochester, they were known as a distance school. And so when Coach Tim Hale hired me, he was just like, hey, I want you to work with the sprints. And I was like, I can run fast, but I don't know if I can coach it. And he said, oh, you'll be fine. So between Coach Hart, my club coach, Cedric Walker, just kind of implementing programs and me going to some coaching clinics, that was probably the best thing that I ever did. But I think the time I had learning from Coach Hart, by far was probably my best experience ever as a coach.
What was it like going from athlete to coach?
It's always different because as a coach, as an athlete, I mean, you're listening to what your coach is telling you to do, and you're trying to execute it as best you can. And then as a coach, I think the hardest part is getting them to do what you want them to do. And unlike other sports where they're about to mess up, we can't call timeouts in track and field.
Yeah.
And so I think not being able to control what they're doing on the track, that's the hard thing. I probably love field events more than anything because you can take one jump and you can make a correction. But once that gun goes off, you can't make a correction if you don't do it. And I wish sometimes I could run on the track, time out.
Yeah.
After the 100 meters, hey, listen, you got to get out faster, but you can't do that. And so I think the biggest adjustment for me is finding, because kids are, I would say student athletes are different too. So trying to figure out what word works for them or a certain cue. So I might say push for a kid to push better down the track, and I might have to tell another kid, I might have to say pull or something else. So it's just trying to find out what makes them click in the races overall.
That's great. What about the transition from being recruited by running for Coach Hart to then working with him? That's a different dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, because Coach Hart's always been, I mean, I know, John, you've interviewed him several times. Coach Hart is straight to the point, and you know where he's coming from.
Right.
And as a recruit, we talked briefly, I think, in the process maybe 3 times. And he didn't bother me. He just said, hey, this is your scholarship. This is a great school. I'm a great coach. Come. And that was it.
Kind of like, you don't need an interview. Yeah. This is the job. Yes
very
or no.
similar.
Exactly. And so for me, it was he had Michael Johnson at the time. He was still training here. So he would call me from time to time. So I was like, okay, well, the fastest guy in the world's calling me.
Yeah, that's a good recruiting
That's
tool right
a
there.
great recruiting tool. And so, but Coach Hart, he was always like that. He was always, hey, this is what we want. I remember when I came in for my visit, the visit was horrible. It was a rainy day. I was thinking Texas. Never. At the time, I only had been to Texas 2 times. But this particular time on my visit, I love basketball. Basketball is probably my second favorite sport besides track. Went to Baylor the men's team had a game at the Farrell Center, and it was a gas leak, so they canceled the game.
Oh
my gosh!
So then the weather was not great at all.
So you're like, okay, yay Texas!
Right.
And so I think my only great experience was Michael Johnson he picked me up in his Corvette, and we went to the IHOP that's no longer here now near campus.
Yeah.
But my talk with Coach Hart, he said, "Hey, what do you want to?" He said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I said, "Well, I want to get my degree. I want to go to business. I want to go to business school. I want to improve in track, and I just want to be a part of a great program." He said, "The things I can't." He said, "I can't promise you that I'll make you a national champ, but I can promise you if you do everything right, you'll graduate." And he said, "We have one of the top business schools in the country." And he said, "So if you do everything right, you'll graduate." And I was like, "Okay, Coach." And he said, "I'll always be there for you." And that's all I needed. And so when I went home, I told my mom about the visit, and I said, "Hey, rain, cold, Farrell Center, gas leak." And she was like, "You're not going to Baylor, huh?" And I was like, "No, I'm going because of the following things: the family, the Christian emphasis." And I knew that he would take care of me. Even if I got hurt or anything like that, I was going to get taken care of.
And he still is.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and he was at the Texas Relays this week.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is wild. That man is ageless.
Yeah.
He really is. How much does he come around track these days?
Well, it's weird because I hadn't seen him probably since maybe around November.
Yeah.
And then, he'll send me text messages from time to time, just tell me the team is doing, how the team is doing. And he's like, "Hey, Mike, you're doing a great job. Keep it going." And then he texted me this week and said, "Hey, I'm going to come to Texas Relays." I said, "What do you need? Do you need me?" He said, "I just need a wristband to get into the meet." Sure. And I was like, "Okay." So Coach Ken Wheathorn brought him to the meet, and he watched the meet on Saturday.
That's great.
So we got a chance to speak a little bit.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
You know his body clock?
Yeah.
Gets this time of year. He's gonna be in Austin that weekend.
Yeah.
And he'll probably be at
he'll probably be at the Dr. I'm gonna say the Dr.
Baylor
Pepper,
Invitational
but
this
the Baylor
weekend.
Invitational.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of the successes from the Texas Relays this past weekend. I think it's fair to put the headline as Johnny Bracken's, right?
Oh yeah, you can. You could
Wow.
lead.
I guess.
Yeah.
You could lead with Johnny Brackens. You could lead with Zaza Prosper.
Right.
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
those are the two. You also had Nathaniel Ezekiel in the 400 hurdles. Currently, right now, they're all number one in the country.
In the country,
yeah. So we got 3 number 1 kids in the country
Fantastic.
right now in those events.
Johnny in the long jump broke a long-standing Baylor school record. The outdoor record was held by Danny Brabham, set in 1973. And Johnny broke that. 26.9 3/4 was his mark.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was funny because that was, we were speaking earlier, and I missed that jump. And I saw the first one, and he jumped 26.6. And I was like, "Okay, Johnny." I said, "Hey, it's a great start." And then I rushed back. We were getting the relays together. And then I looked on my phone to look at the results, and I saw his second jump. And when he broke that record, I was like, "Whoa." I said, "Let me just find out what the wind reading was, make sure that it was a legal jump." And it was. And so I was like, "Oh, my gosh, that's awesome." And I was like, "I think that's a school record."
Yeah. Well, again, that's part of your, know, you would know a sprint record just like that.
Just
right?
like that,
But that's,
But I just knew, when you get into that 27-foot barrier, that's always the big barrier. So to jump 26.9, I mean, that was impressive. He's had an awesome freshman year so far, going from indoor, being an All-American indoor. And he's just doing really good.
I was going to say, let's just not glaze over that part.
Freshman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with Zaza Prosper.
Right.
Freshmen in their first meet,
Yeah.
making things like this happen is just incredible. And I feel like we've had the opportunity to do that a couple times around here. So the track team's doing great.
Yeah, I think they just, I mean, like Zaza, his for us wasn't, it was expected. I mean, he was top 4 at under 20 World Championships last year as a at the World Championship. So his mark wasn't. We thought he would do well coming in, and he even his first couple throws, they weren't great, and but then he just got. I mean, he got into the groove. Competition was really good. In the javelin, especially in the A section, and he just launched it, and we're like looking at it, and it's not coming down.
Wow.
But that was definitely impressive, and that because that record was, there are parallels because Nick Lyons, who had the school record, Coach Brabham coached him.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's great.
So
yeah,
it was awesome to see that.
very cool.
How neat is it for you in your first year of head coaching to be looking? It's the only the second meet for the outdoor season, and to be at this point where you have people like these two freshmen who are number 1 in the country doing great things on very big stages already. To think about the future of your program, obviously you still have a great rest of the season, and we're going to talk about what's coming up this weekend. But just to know, I mean, when you think about it right here, the potential and the foundation that you're kind of getting to start with as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, after this week, I was like, man, we always talk about building blocks, and so you have to build the blocks to get to higher levels, and I think we're slowly doing that correctly, especially on our men's side. Our ladies, they're always kind of just steady, but I think on the men, we always talk about we'll probably never win a conference championship just because of the numbers and the cost of Baylor. We can't spread our money out as much as we want, our scholarship money as much as we want to, but we can do really well at nationals. And so for Zaza, for Johnny, Zeke, and then Nathaniel to lay some marks down, that's a good thing. And I think for us is just how can we improve on those marks? How can we elevate some of the other young men on our team to elevate to that level too? Because it's, even if if they all scored at nationals and all win nationals, we'll probably be top 4, which is a good thing. But how can we elevate higher and make sure that we do it at that time when it counts, like the regional meet and at nationals? And so my big focus now is trying to make sure, 1, we stay healthy, and then 2, keep putting some marks down, but also making sure that as a staff that we prepare those student athletes to be ready at nationals.
How, coming out of the Texas relays, how did the men's and women's relays do, different relays?
Yeah, they did well. The men's 4x1, it was actually our first time running it. Okay. We had a couple of little injuries going into the meet, but I thought they ran well. And our women, we're 4th. Of women's 4x1 was 4th overall. And the time that we ran was, I think, probably our fastest time as an opener at Texas Relays. I think last year we didn't run the 43.8 until nationals, so we've done that a lot earlier. 4x4s, they did well. Guys run 3:02 and some change, and we just had got back. Nathaniel ran on it, and we weren't sure how he was going to run after he ran 2 really good 400 hurdle races that week, but he came out and ran well, and Trey Fields ran awesome. I think he had one of the fastest splits of the meet, and he split 44.7. And they look really good. And the ladies, that was probably the first time we ran those 4 young ladies since conference, and I thought they ran well. They ran 3:32, and that was a good job. And then also on our DMR ladies finished 4th. And so I thought overall, relay-wise, we did really well. I still think we have a lot room for improvement on the 4x1 and the 4x4. And I think for us to be in the top 8, we're going to have to run a lot faster to get to nationals. But I think it's doable.
Going off of that, as you kind of move past the relays, relish in the celebrations and things, but focusing on what is coming up this weekend, which is the first home meet of the outdoor season, getting to host the Baylor Invitational. Kind of what's the focus this week as you guys go into practice and prepare for that?
Well, I think the big focus for us is just trying to keep improving each week. A lot of course, when you go to the big invite meets like Texas Relays, a lot of your student athletes don't get to run in it because they have a small number of athletes. So get to see a lot of our student athletes get to compete at home in front of some fans and some family members. But I think the biggest thing is just trying to make improvements. Some of our top kids are probably going to be doing different events than their normal events. And so we're just kind of working on that right now to see what events they're going to do. But I think our biggest emphasis is still like steady making improvements for the conference meet to get prepared for that and trying to get our relays, get a little bit more depth on our relays too. I think just really seeing a lot more kids run because the first TCU meet, we didn't bring a lot. The TCU, well, I would say TCU meet was coming off of spring break, so a lot of kids went on spring break, so it was trying to get them back into shape. Then Texas Relays was a small group, and so now we've had like at least 2 or 3 weeks of training in. So now we can get to see a little bit more people compete this week and then get ready for the A&M meet, and then we have an off week before MJ.
Yeah. And MJ is your second home meet. What's the dates on that one?
The April 22nd and the 23rd.
Okay. So 2 home meets this year at the beautiful facility, Clyde Hart Track and Field Stadium. I know folks like Pat Nunley, who I work with in basketball. Pat says, what are the dates of the meets? Because he puts them on his calendar, and he loves coming out there. Yeah. And so I know a lot of people do. I mean, these are the home meets. This is it for the year for Baylor Track and Field this weekend, and then April 22nd, 23rd.
Yeah. So we'll actually start on Friday. On the first, we have the Hammer. That's the only event that we'll have on Friday, and then the rest of the meet will be on Saturday. And then for MJ, we've changed it up a little bit. We'll have some more events on Friday, and then we'll finish up it on Saturday.
Okay.
So like for MJ, I think we're doing long jump on Friday night. We'll do the 200 on Friday night. We'll do the 400 hurdles on Friday night, and then we can focus a little bit more on Saturday.
It's a little different.
Yeah, a little different.
Schedule.
Yeah, just because at this time of the year, or during that time of the year, a lot of schools don't want to double on the same day. Yeah. And so, because we don't like to do it either.
Sure.
So we're going to just kind of spread it out a little bit, and then we'll get done a little quicker. Because I know Saturday at Baylor that weekend is going to be pretty busy.
That's a big exactly. But this will fit right in with everything else that's going on. Spring football scrimmage, all that stuff on
just
April
across
23rd.
The parking lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Easy. Park in one spot and walk.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to I know we have a lot of alum come back for the Michael Johnson meet, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Which is fun. Y'all do a great job with that, bringing alums back.
Yeah.
Really good. Well, appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, and congratulations on the success down in Austin. We're looking forward to the Baylor Invitational this weekend.
No, I am too. I'm just going to pray to the weather gods that we have great weather.
Looks like it. Right now, it looks good, doesn't it?
It looks good right now.
Yeah.
We'll just keep praying with you. Fingers crossed, praying with you that we keep having weather like this.
Yeah.
That'll be nice. Appreciate you being here. That is Michael Ford, Baylor's track and field coach. For Brooke Bednarz, I'm John Morris, and that's this week's Sic Em Podcast.
You've been listening to the Sic Em Podcast. The Sic Em Podcast has been a production of Baylor Athletics.